Hi, everybody. It is 6:02 p.m. On October 15th, 2020. It's the regularly scheduled meeting of the Somerville Planning Board. I am the chairman, Mike Capuano. With me are members Jahan Habib, Amelia Aboff, Sam Dinning, and Rob Buchanan. We have a number of items on our agenda this evening. They are as follows. 101 to 153 South Street, and that applicant has requested a continuance, so we'll take a vote on that shortly. We will also be opening and taking testimony on a new public hearing for 455 Grand Union Boulevard. And we will also be discussing the last two proposed map changes that were discussed through a joint hearing between the Planning Board and the Land Use Committee of the Board of Aldermen. We had made recommendations on the several other proposed map and language changes, and these two were the ones that were still kind of in the works when we last met. So what I'd like to do first is I would like to have the clerk of the Planning Board, Sam Dinning, read in the notice a public hearing for the Grand Union Boulevard application, please.
This is Planning Board 2017-05 R209 20 455 Grand Union Boulevard, Block 5B. Applicant Puma North America Inc. proposes to construct rooftop signage in the Assembly Square Mixed-Use District under Section 6.4.14 as a revision to a special permit with Site Plan Review A, SPSR A.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. This is Rebecca speaking. I just wanted to make a little reminder that we do need to read the notice of the hearing being held remotely.
Oh, you're absolutely right. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Laws, Chapter 38, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, as well as Mayor Curtatoni's declaration of emergency dated March 15th, 2020. This meeting of the Planning Board will be conducted, and it is being conducted via remote participation. We will have an audio recording available upon request as soon as possible after the meeting. This meeting is being recorded. So,
thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sure, while I've got you on, the applicant for Point Yards has 101 to 153 South Street has requested a continuance. Could you remind me what the next date of our next regularly scheduled meeting is? I think it's the 5th.
Yes, Mr. Chair, this is Rebecca speaking, and I'm just confirming that you're correct, and the next regularly scheduled meeting will be November 5th.
Okay. With that request for continuance made by the applicant, the chair moves to continue discussion on that application to the November 5th meeting, seconded by the clerk. Roll call vote. The chair votes aye.
Sam votes aye.
Amelia votes to abstain, is abstaining from this vote.
Jahan votes aye. Rob votes aye.
Okay. With 4 votes in support and 1 abstention, this discussion is continued to the November 5th meeting. We will then take up the next public hearing that we're actually going to be discussing, which is Planning Board 2017-05-R2-09/20, which is 455 Grand Union Boulevard. I expect it's going to be a highly contentious discussion on building signage. So what I'd like to do is have the applicant, the applicant's attorney, please be unmuted and make a presentation for the board and whoever of the public is present to listen and provide testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Rebecca speaking. I recognize that Joe Hanley's in the audience for the applicant, and I am unmuting him now.
Excellent. Thank you, Rebecca. I see that I'm unmuted. Can everyone hear me? Good evening. Thank you, Chairman Capuano, members of the board, and staff of the planning department. My name is Attorney Joe Hanley from McDermott, Quilty & Miller, representing Puma North America. With me on the line here is Tom Cohen, who is the Vice President and Deputy General Counsel for Puma North America, as well as Gary McCoy from Poignant Signs, who designed the signage and the plans you have before you, and Alex White, our property manager from Cushman Wakefield. Just to give you some quick background, the application is for a revision to a special permit for signage on the building at Block 5B in the Assembly Square Master Plan District. I'm sorry, Assembly Square Mixed Use District. This is in a 13-story building that's 201 feet in height. It is currently under construction, as you're probably aware. It was approved by this board in 2018, and at that same year, Puma North America announced that they would be relocating their North American headquarters to Somerville, which was a big positive development for Assembly and for the city of Somerville. 150 employees day one when they open, and more to follow, I'm sure. So I mentioned that because the request is for the signage on the building rooftop in compliance with the special permit requirements. The building is internal to Assembly Square, meaning it is not directly abutting any residential buildings, and the plans for growth and development in the area calls for commercial development around it. I say that because that supports the basis for signage on the rooftop in a commercial area. The building itself is a mixed use retail and office building. It is anticipated to be delivered to Puma, their space, on November 2nd, which is just a couple weeks away. So we greatly appreciate your consideration of the signage as they need to determine if this is the approved and final form, so they can get materials ordered for their projected 2021 opening in the city of Somerville at this location. The rest of our application, as well as the material provided by planning staff, supports, as I've indicated, the location of this building, the location of the signage, which is also on the western side of the building, meaning it's facing the expressway, which we would suggest is also supportive. And I'll give you just the basics of the sign, of the size of the sign, approximately 2,239 square feet, and approximately 36 feet high and 62 feet long. But of course, that's on a 13-story building. So it's similar to the signage, commercial signage that you see in these mixed-use offices, office buildings of high-rise scale in Assembly Square. And that concludes our presentation. Our full team is here to answer any questions you might have. And on behalf of Puma North America, your new corporate headquarters here in Somerville, we appreciate the opportunity to come before you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hanley. I've looked at the plans, I've looked at the suggested required findings in the staff memo, and this seems pretty straightforward. And your client's plans look very much in line with the other signage that we have approved for some of our bigger buildings in Assembly Square, including the Partners Building. So I don't know if other members of the planning board have any comments or questions at this time, or if staff does. No. Okay. Thank-
Mr. Chair, this is Sarah
Yeah.
Lewis, Planning Director. I'd just like to add one clarification. I realized today that there was a missing document on the website, which has not yet been remedied. So the difference between the original application for this building was 12 stories and 190 feet. There was a revision at the end of 2018 that for some reason is not on the reports and decisions page. And that was when Puma was first looking at the building, and it enlarged the office uses above, and that building then became taller, 201 feet plus an additional story to make it 13 total. So I will remedy that online missing report tomorrow morning.
Yeah, and those, I might just add to, Mr. Chairman, thank you, Director Lewis. Those dimensions are all properly recorded in our application and our plans before you as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification, Sarah. Anybody have any questions right now? Okay. With no questions at this point from the board, I'm going to take this time to open up this public hearing for testimony. For anybody that wants to speak in support of this application, I would ask you to click the raised hand button next to your name, and I'll call you in the order in which I see you. Going once, going twice. I'm going to close that portion of the public hearing and open it up to anybody that wants to speak in opposition to this application or otherwise express concern. Next sign is your raised hand. Seeing none, we will close that portion of the public hearing and open it up for any further discussion by members of the board. I've already kind of said my thoughts on this application. I think it's very straightforward. I think it is in keeping with other signage that we have approved in this district. And I think it will be appropriate to adopt the recommended findings proposed in the staff memorandum. Okay.
I would just like to offer that I'm to locate it where the building steps back, as opposed to sort of, I think that it is fully done, and I appreciate it's been made to integrate it into the building. I'm sure that the opportunity to have a sign that faced the highway was the attractiveness of the site, and I'm pleased that the applicant has made good aesthetic decisions about aligning it with the building itself.
Thank you, Amelia. Anybody else? Seeing none, the chair will move to adopt the recommended findings that are listed in the staff memorandum. Seconded by the clerk. Roll call vote. The chair votes aye.
Sam votes aye.
Amelia votes aye.
Jahan votes aye. Rob votes aye.
Okay. We have a unanimous vote in support of this application. Good luck to the applicant, and I look forward to your opening in November and in 2021. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thank you.
And thank you again for choosing Somerville. It's a big deal for us, and I'm happy you're here. Okay, we have two other items on the agenda that are considered kind of other business in our parlance, and they are the two remaining proposed map changes that we had previous discussions on. One with a number of parcels on McGrath Highway, and one were 2 parcels on Merriam Street. So what I'd like to do first is bring up McGrath Highway. So if I could, I know the last time that we had a meeting and brought these up, that was still under consideration by the Land Use Committee. And I wouldn't mind getting a brief update from staff on where we are on those proposed map changes.
Mr. Chair, can
Mr.
I ask
Chair?
for 15 seconds to go get my notes? I left them in the other room on this one.
Yes. Have a brief recess and be back in a minute.
Appreciate that.
Good. Okay. Planning board is back on the record and back in session.
Mr. Chairman, Sarah Lewis speaking. At the last Land Use Committee, to the best of my knowledge, both of these proposals were not discussed. They were working on the affordable housing overlay. And so the Land Use Committee has not yet taken up the Merriam Street or the McGrath Highway map amendments.
All right. In that case, I do think it's appropriate for the planning board to take a vote on both of these this evening, just so that the land use committee is aware of our position on these map changes. As we have done in previous cases where, for example, it's like we know McGrath Highway is still kind of under consideration. They're looking at amending certain things, they're looking at perfecting it, that this board has in the past made a recommendation of no recommendation. So I do want to remind folks that is still an option and a position for this board to take. So I'd just like to hear all your thoughts on McGrath Highway at this time.
This is Rob. I'm wondering, I'm happy to offer comments, but maybe for the sake of others, and I don't know who all might be listening at home, if it might be helpful for the staff or someone to just give 2 or 3 sentences about what this is, if folks are amenable.
Mr. Chair, Sarah Lewis, I will do that. I need to click a little bit to get to the council's agenda because I don't recall off the top of my head.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to catch you off guard.
No worries.
Rob, based on the notes that was sent to me, it's a change of several parcels of McGrath Highway from MR3 to MR4 and 2 other parcels from NR to UR.
And I believe this is the one that was put forward by Councillor Ewan Kempen. So I'm happy to hear Director Lewis's summary, but I guess I feel as though a councillor-driven process is a little bit different from some of the other items that we might be called to provide recommendations on.
Mr. Chair, this is Rebecca speaking. I just wanted to, because I have it in front of me, I wanted to offer that I can read this through for everybody. The change for item 210472, which is the proposal to change the zoning district for 8 properties on McGrath Highway. There is a change for 6 properties to go from MR3, Mid-Rise 3 to Mid-Rise 4, and that's 402 McGrath Highway, 394 McGrath Highway, 386 McGrath Highway, 382 McGrath Highway, 376 McGrath Highway and 368 to 374 McGrath Highway. There are also 2 further map changes, parcel changes on that proposal. That is to change from the NR or Neighborhood Residence District to the UR or Urban Residence District. And that would be for 414 McGrath Highway and 406 McGrath Highway. Vice Chair Aloff is correct that these were proposed by Councilor Ewan Campen.
Thank you. Does anybody have any other questions or comments on this series of proposed map changes?
Chairman Capuano, I would just like to go on the record and thank Senior Planner Cooper for being so prepared where I wasn't.
Rebecca is one of our most valued members of our team, and she was a phenomenal colleague on the planning board, and I always took her cue because she was always more prepared and better prepared than I. If that is the case, I think that it's appropriate, as Amelia has pointed out, that because this is a council member proposed series of map changes, that we recommend adoption of these map changes, knowing fully well that the council may amend in their own deliberations, and let Councilor Ewan Campen and his colleagues figure out precisely what's best for his proposal. So I will vote to recommend adoption of these several map changes on McGrath Highway for adoption by the Board of Aldermen, the City Council, seconded by the clerk. I'm going to take a roll call vote. Chair votes aye.
Sam votes aye.
Amelia votes aye.
Jahan votes aye.
Rob votes aye.
Great. We have a unanimous recommendation for adoption of these series of map changes. I believe the last item on our agenda are the 2 parcels on Merriam Street, 34 and 36 Merriam Street. The applicant, or I guess the proponent of this map change is the property owner. Wants to change it from neighborhood residence to the urban residence district. I do have some thoughts on this application, that is proposed series of map changes, but I'd like to hear from my colleagues as well. So what I'd like to do is open it up to members of the planning board to have discussion on this series of map changes. Okay, then in that case,
I'm sorry.
Yes.
I have a map in front of me, which I don't honestly know if there's a way for me to share my screen. I'd be happy to if it's appropriate, but I just wanted to note that throughout this process, I'm, on the one hand, I think sympathetic to the fact that these lots are located, you know, adjacent to another large UR plot, and the applicant's argument that sort of is detracting from the character in some way. But there was also an argument put forward that they were outliers and they were sort of missing, that they were not well characterized as an NR district. And I think they are quite well characterized in an NR district, in that they are part of a thread of an NR block that carries through all the way from Allen Street to the other side of Merriam Street. And changing that from NR to UR would break up the continuity of a zone that, while it does have a few more highly zoned pockets, sort of makes sense as a contiguous neighborhood in its current format. So I just wanted to note, I guess, before going further, that the premise of one of the arguments that the applicant had really put forward did not align with my read of the map.
Thank you. I do want to raise two things that I think distinguish this particular proposal for map changes from the others that we've seen and voted on in this last go around. Of the, I believe, 5 series of proposed map changes that we saw, 2 were kind of ongoing community processes. That was, I think, McGrath Highway and Gilman. And one was proposed by residents and one was proposed by a councilor, but they both spoke to kind of broader neighborhood-wide replanning and redesigns that we understand are going to continue being amended and perfected as time goes on. The other 2 that were before us were effectively ministerial changes. One was a language change, was an error, and one was a councilor proposed amendment on Murdoch Street for basically a parcel that was missed, that they had intended to incorporate within the zone and didn't do it. And Councilor Needigang spoke in support of the map change, basically saying that they intended to do it and it kind of fell through the cracks. This one, I think, is distinguishable because it is not either one of those. It is an individual property owner saying, we have gone through the neighborhood process. The individual ward councilors, as well as the at-large councils, but particularly the ward councilors, have gone through with a pretty fine-tooth comb when we were going through the overhaul process last year and in years prior, to work with their various constituents in the neighborhoods, with neighborhood groups, to identify properties that they thought would be appropriately zoned in certain categories. And it was an 8-year process, and this was not one of those 2 contiguous properties that were identified as mistakes. We let it fall through the cracks, as some were, and they were not identified as those that are kind of part of a bigger neighborhood process, like the others that we had before us. So this is effectively, to me, a property owner saying, I didn't like the way that the public process worked and I'd like to change it. I think that's not appropriate. It is not something that we generally see, and it's not something that we generally approve when we've gone through, like I said, 8 years of community process to a very detailed level where councils would have neighborhood meetings with breakout groups saying, what property do you think fits in what zone? For years, people have looked at this street, looked at this neighborhood, and said that these particular properties belong in the zone that it's currently in. And I don't see any compelling reason for this board to go against that. So it would be my intent to recommend denial of the adoption of this proposed map change for those reasons. Rob.
Yeah, Mr. Chair. I do not think that I will be supportive of this either. In part, and I take all of your points as well as Amelia's points under consideration. On top of that, I know that the city planning staff are undertaking some kind of Union Square East more comprehensive, planning effort for this whole neighborhood. And personally, I would be reluctant to make one-off changes to individual parcels until that process has been complete. Mr. Chair, I'm wondering through you if we might be able to get just a very brief update about where that particular process is and sort of on what timeline it might be on. That would just be helpful.
If staff can provide a quick update, I'd appreciate that.
Through the chair, this is Sarah Lewis. We don't have timing on, we've had conversations with Councillor Scott and understand his priorities, but at this point in time, we don't have a schedule. So I don't really have an estimate as to when that work will be done. My instinct says it probably will not start until the spring. Just because we're going to be examining brick bottom first.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any comments or discussion on these two proposed, or this combined proposed map change? And when I say that, I want to clarify that we did get, in response to my inquiry, a response from the solicitor's office that the notice or the notice for this proposal meets muster, that even though it was noticed as, I think, 34-36, that for the purpose of notice, it is sufficient, even though the parcels are 34 and 36. So I had a question on the appropriateness of the notice that was made on these proposed map changes, and the opinion that we received from the law department was that it was appropriate and proper.
Mr. Chair, I'd just add briefly, and this is probably reiterating Amelia's reasoning. I think the language in the application was unnaturally underzoned was the quote. That got my attention, and I think to Amelia's point, that's overstated. You can acknowledge that it's kind of a bit of a hodgepodge in that neighborhood in places. There are certain lots that are not NR lots, but to say it's unnaturally underzoned seems like it's you're stretching your case a little bit there. So for the reasons that other people have said, I will also not be voting to recommend this.
John, go for it.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. I've had the opportunity to study this matter, and for all the reasons that my esteemed board members, including yourself, Mr. Chair, have mentioned, I'm not going to be in support of this map change. Based on my reading of the request made by the applicant, it appears to serve narrower interests rather than the neighborhood and the residents of the neighborhood at large.
Thanks very much, John. I think the board is unanimous in its belief that these proposed map changes should not be adopted. So I will move to that end, that the planning board recommend that these map changes not be adopted by the council, seconded by the clerk. A roll call vote. The chair votes aye.
Sam votes aye.
Amelia votes aye.
Jahan votes aye.
Rob votes aye.
That is a unanimous vote not to recommend these map changes. And staff, could you please remind me, is there anything else on our agenda tonight? I don't think so.
Mr. Chair, this is Rebecca speaking, and you are correct. That's the end of our agenda.
Okay, Rebecca, I want to apologize to you. I'm 5 minutes over where I thought we would be. So I think I owe you a drink. So the chair votes to adjourn, seconded by the clerk. Roll call vote. The chair votes aye.
Sam votes aye.
Amelia votes aye.
Jahan votes aye.
Rob votes aye.
See you all on the 5th. Thank you, everybody, very much. Have a good night.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.